Wow, oh, it's new and beautiful. Looks like a nice, usable house. This is our cherished new home, meticulously planned and built by my husband and me, a newly married couple. It was our parents-in-law, both of them, who carelessly dropped their muddy, old suitcase right in the middle of our meticulously cleaned living room. To our surprise, they were moving from today. They announced they lived with us. I was shocked and confronted my husband. Why is this happening without any discussion? Don't worry, my mom's here to help with the housework, right? We'll get used to it soon, and supporting each other as a family is what matters. There's no problem. My husband, heavily influenced by his parents, didn't seem to consider my refusal at all. He grew up in a grand, old American-style house, and frankly, he has always seen the role of a wife as nothing more than a convenient housekeeper. A viewpoint shared by his parents. I had endured weekly dinners at their house, where my father-in-law would openly call me a disobedient woman. Furthermore, we were short on rooms, so my husband ordered me to vacate mine. "You can sleep in the yard, it's lucky for you since you won't have to deal with my parents," he said with a smirk. Holding back my tears, I rushed into my room. And then, when I returned, dragging a heavy suitcase just as burdensome as my in-laws, my husband and his parents were shocked. I announced loudly, "I'm going back to my parents' house, enjoy yourselves." I am Mirabelle. Currently, I work in the product development department of a health food company. I'm 32, and my husband, Tom, also 32, works in the sales department of the same company. Tom is a very thoughtful person, a hidden gem in any team he joins, always playing a supportive role. He's a top performer in our department, a husband I'm proud of. Our first meeting was at a departmental mixer. Dressed up, I caught his attention with the antique ring on my little finger. He was intrigued by my hobby of collecting antique jewelry. He admitted to thinking rings were just flashy, gem-studded pieces from his family's collection, so I introduced him to more vintage designs. Soon, we started going out for meals after work and on weekends, quickly progressing to a relationship, followed by a proposal in less than 6 months, celebrated by many colleagues and superiors. We had a dream even before marriage. Building our own home. Our goal was to contribute equally, take out a loan, and create a small but detailed home of our own. I'd like a spacious living room, maybe a yard, thinking of kids and pets in the future. We might not have a big budget, but I'll work harder than ever, save more, do whatever it takes. We had many requests about the house. We have a certain location in mind, but we need to decide on the land based on transportation, shopping, imagine when we have children, the design of the exterior, and other points that each of us has that we can't miss. We had meticulously planned and worked tirelessly with a design firm to create our dream home. Though the plot was introduced by a real estate agent near my parents' house, they are quite kind and won't trouble you. No worries, they were nice during our visit. But your mom's cooking skills are a bit intimidating. His family used to own a lot of land in the area. Now mostly sold off, except for their residents. Luckily, due to these connections, we got priority in securing our plot. Since we searched through connections, the location ended up being a plot close to my in-laws' house. I didn't have many opportunities to meet my in-laws outside of formal greetings. Because of this, I felt the need to be cautious and was quite nervous about how to interact with them. However, my in-laws always seemed cheerful and kind, and they appeared genuinely happy whenever I visited. My father-in-law was the breadwinner with a strong sense of responsibility, and my mother-in-law was a dedicated homemaker. When they heard about our plans for a new home, they were excited and supportive, and I thought they were wonderful parents-in-law. As our house plans progressed to the construction phase, my husband and I decided to visit his parents' house. Their house was nearby, though not next door. We wanted to make a good impression early on. Their house was a large, traditional American-style home. And I was always overwhelmed by its size. They greeted us with smiles as usual. "Building your own house is a big step, but I'm proud of my son. Our house is old, so a new, clean home is something to admire. Building a house is exciting, isn't it? Mirabelle, we're looking forward to it too. That's how my in-laws both gave me their support. Our current residence was a bit far from there. My husband, Tom, suggested, it's gonna be a while till the house is finished, but how about we spend more time together in the meantime? I readily agreed, of course, let's do that. Tom had a good relationship with his parents, and they were always up to date with his business trips and weekend plans. So, we started getting invited over on weekends that coincided with our days off. The visits were for simple reasons like going to the mall or having meals at their home. However, I felt there was a limit. For example, I would get calls from my mother-in-law on a Friday night saying, "Mirabelle, thank you for the last time. Next time, could you drive us to look for a purse as a gift for a friend? It would be a big help. Also, we're inviting you over for lunch on Sunday. We're getting some nice fish, so bring Tom along. Could you bring a dish? I'm good at fried and stewed dishes and salads, so please bring something else. And about your clothes." She not only talked at length, but also filled up our weekend schedule and made specific requests. I wondered if dealing with in-laws was always this demanding and secretly asked my friends for advice, but all I got were comments blaming the oddity of my in-laws. I began to dread visiting them and felt increasingly trapped. As my work in the product development department got busier and the frequent visits to my in-laws' house fueled my mistrust. One day, I mustered the courage to decline over the phone. I feel bad visiting so often, and I also want to have some quiet time on the weekends. I'm embarrassed to say, but with work, I can hardly keep up with chores at home. I tried to deflect the conversation, but my mother-in-law was unyielding. Insisting, "Don't be shy, we're family now," and I couldn't escape that weekend's plans. Reluctantly, I went to my in-laws' house with a heavy heart. To make matters worse, my husband knew I had tried to decline the invitation. Throughout the car ride, he scolded me. Mom was sad, Dad might say something, blaming me. At their house, with dishes spread across the dining table, the topic came up again. I felt like I was sitting on pins and needles. Then my father-in-law pointed at my mother-in-law and said, "Why don't you go help out? It's not too much for her. That would be too much for Mom." "That's not a problem. She can just finish the housework during the week and then come clean up your apartment. She's a homemaker, after all, she's got free time." I was surprised by his suggestion and even more so by his tone. His attitude towards my mother-in-law, a homemaker, was filled with misconceptions and harsh assumptions. I was at a loss for words, feeling like he was a boss issuing orders rather than a family member. What was terrifying was that my mother-in-law just smiled and nodded, as if my husband's instructions were the most natural thing in the world. I felt a chill down my spine. Thankfully, I managed to fend off the suggestion that she take over our household chores. In stark contrast to her compliance, my repeated refusals made my father-in-law mutter, "What a disobedient daughter-in-law." I could feel my irritation rising, and my heart raced. My father-in-law quickly became sullen, and my mother-in-law scrambled to cater to his needs. The tension in the air was suffocating, and I quietly resolved to stop visiting my in-laws. The following week, when my mother-in-law called, I tried to excuse myself, saying, "I have other plans and can't come." If the new house was completed and they had to live near their in-laws, they would have had to see each other every day, not just every week off. The horrible thought filled me with dread. Why not? Haven't you finished your chores? Maybe it would have been better if I had helped out, like my husband suggested. She persisted, but I had my response ready. "I have plans with a friend who attended our wedding. We're going out as a thank you. So, I can't come today, but I'll visit when our schedules align. I'll make sure to convey my thanks to my friend." I rattled off my excuse and managed to end the call. The promise was a lie, but feeling unsafe at home, I quickly left. From that day on, I found excuses to avoid visiting my in-laws. Despite this strained relationship, our new home was completed. My husband, Tom, and I were thrilled with our sparkling new house and took great care in cleaning every corner. However, not even half a month after moving in, my mother-in-law summoned me unexpectedly. Her tone was serious. "It's something I must tell you. I know you don't plan to come to our house on your days off, but this is something I just have to tell you." "Okay, I'll come right over," I replied, though it pained me to do so. Rushing over, I found my mother-in-law eager to explain the household chores at her home. The basics are daily sweeping of the entrance and garden. Normally it's just dry wiping, but on weekends we do a thorough mopping. Plus, there's shopping and managing the household budget. "Oh, you can change things to suit you." She smiled kindly, but I was baffled by her explanation. It was as if she was discussing how we would share chores if I moved in with them. "Wait a minute. Why are you telling me all this?" I wondered what she expected me to do with this information about cleaning supplies and kitchen use. When I asked, her face clouded over. "You married into our family, Mirabelle, so you need to follow our ways. Don't you know that yet? Don't you want to contribute to your husband's family?" Then she asked, "How long are you planning to keep working?" I was speechless, having had no intention of quitting my job. It seemed she expected me to eventually leave my job, become a homemaker, and help out with their chores. Stunned by this unexpected turn, I firmly stated, "If that's the case, I'm leaving. I understand my duties as a wife and will help out where I can, but my priority is my time with my husband. I have work in our own household chores, so I can't help out here." With that, I left my in-laws' house. I immediately protested to Tom, but he took his parents' side and wouldn't listen. "I didn't marry into this family to do their housework," I said, but he just looked annoyed. "Are you always this selfish? My parents can't be wrong. Can't you get along with them?" I was speechless and could only stare back at him. I was shocked not only by the vast difference in thinking between me and my in-laws but also by my husband Tom's refusal to listen to my views. He's usually not like this, but when it comes to his parents, especially his father, he seems to change completely, adhering to whatever they say as absolute. The decision to build our own home was initially suggested by his father, who wanted to maintain good relations with a real estate agent through purchasing land. The word divorce involuntarily flashed through my mind. But with Tom frequently away on business trips, I was often left alone at home. Plus, there was the fact that we had just built our dream home. I decided to observe the situation a little longer, as long as I could keep a distance from his parents. However, I made it clear to Tom that I didn't want any involvement with his parents. "The relationship with your family is quite different from a normal mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationship. Honestly, I don't want any more involvement. I won't be visiting your parents' house for chores, and I have no intention of living with them. Please remember that." I expressed this earnestly. I expected him to get angry, but surprisingly, Tom backed down, saying, "Okay, I got it. I'll handle things with my parents from now on." A month later, on a weekend, I was preparing lunch at home. Then Tom, who had been out since morning, returned with multiple voices accompanying him. I was surprised to see my in-laws enter the living room with large bags. "Oh, it's so nice and clean because it's new. It looks like a great, user-friendly house," exclaimed my father-in-law with a loud laugh. Tom seemed proud as he showed them around the living room, carrying heavy luggage like carry-on cases and backpacks. When I confronted him, he began to say something unbelievable. He announced that his parents were moving in with us from today. "What? Why? Without any discussion?" I've been thinking about this for a while. Since Mirabelle doesn't want to deal with my parents, I've been mediating. "Don't worry, my mom's here for the housework, right? We'll get used to it, and it's good to support each other, no problem," he said, as if he never doubted I would welcome living with his parents. I felt a sense of despair. I was foreseeing a difficult life living with in-laws whose perspectives were so different from mine. I was determined to avoid living with them, but apparently, our house and land had already been sold without my knowledge. The preparations for their move were made entirely behind my back. They only brought their immediate belongings, and their larger furniture was stored in a storage unit. I had just told Tom that I wanted to minimize interaction with his parents, and now I felt utterly betrayed. Why did you decide this without telling me? Why proceed unilaterally without any discussion? Don't you consider my feelings? This is about our future life as a family, we should have discussed it together. But Tom was indifferent. He looked at me as if I was a nuisance. But if my parents want to live with us, what can I do? Think of it as a trial period. Since he didn't want to be involved, I handled the sale and the moving preparations. A trial period? The house is already sold, what are you talking about? Doing this behind my back is like a betrayal. Complaining after marrying into the family? You're the wife, show some understanding and patience. This is my house. Tom snapped, his logic baffling me as he raised his voice. I was stunned. I realized that in his eyes, my thoughts and opinions seemed irrelevant. Ignoring me, he began to show his parents upstairs. Our house has 3 private rooms. Tom's study, my room, and our shared bedroom. We had planned to give my room to our future child. Wondering where he was guiding them, my husband then bluntly said to me, "Get your stuff out of the room." I wasn't surprised, but I was visibly upset. My mom will use your room. Dad gets the bedroom. Why don't you sleep in the yard? You don't want to deal with them, right? It was clear that if each of the in-laws were to use a room, there wouldn't be enough rooms available. The smirk on his face as he suggested I sleep in the yard made it clear this was a well-thought-out way to hassle me. I felt suffocated by the rejection from the man I had loved. While my father-in-law smirked at me in the background. Tom was clearly following his parents' instructions. It was conceivable that he was harassing me because he was told to do so. He chose to side with them, not to protect me. This realization brought a renewed sense of despair, and I could only look at him silently. As he opened my room and demanded me to hurry up, I felt like there was no point in arguing. I entered my room, grabbed the heavy suitcase I had prepared in advance, and left at a speed that took Tom by surprise. I'm going back to my parents' house. Enjoy yourselves, I told them. I had kept my belongings in order so that I could return to my parents' house at any time. Now, anything left in my room could be disposed of without concern. Tom and his parents seemed startled, not expecting me to leave, and they tried to stop me. My mother-in-law even accused me of pushing housework onto her, but I knew that was her intention all along. Having lived with such a father-in-law and with Tom before our marriage, it seemed to me that she had no love for her family. Instead of fighting back, she had hoped to find a new target in me, the daughter-in-law. Ignoring all their schemes, I headed back to my parents' house. Though surprised, my parents understood the situation and showed anger toward Tom and his parents. Feeling supported, I was relieved until Tom contacted me. He was apparently coming to my parents' house with his parents to take me back, saying, "I'll forgive you, so come back." Anticipating a discussion at my parents' house, I made a call to a certain place. With my parents present, the 6 of us sat around a table. Especially my father, upon hearing what I had gone through, glared at Tom and his parents with utmost anger. Yet, Tom and his parents showed no remorse. Instead, my father-in-law took the lead, accusing me of being an unreasonable daughter-in-law who wouldn't contribute to her husband's family. My father glared at them in disbelief. "Mirabelle, you should behave more sensibly as a wife. You're still working instead of dedicating yourself to your husband and his family. You should be grateful that we even tolerate that. And returning to your parents' house, who do you think you are? The complaints you have are nothing compared to the duties of a wife. Why don't you try harder and be more supportive at home?" My mother-in-law added, echoing my father-in-law's criticisms. With Tom interjecting, exactly what my parents are saying. The conversation in my parents' living room became increasingly chaotic. I tried to convey my feelings while enduring their words, but it only added fuel to the fire. Each time I spoke, their retorts grew more intense. Suddenly, my father spoke up. "I can't believe you're forcing her to live with you. She might be your wife, but she's still my daughter. If you're saying she's not good enough, we're happy to take her back. Let's go for a divorce." Encouraged by my father, I brought out the divorce papers that I had printed from a website before their arrival. My part was already filled out. All that was needed was Tom's signature. Seeing this, both my father-in-law and Tom started to get angry. "Don't be stupid. You think this is a solution? A wife should not think she can just divorce. Taking such extreme measures, you're a coward." My father-in-law yelled, while Tom, looking annoyed at me, followed. "We haven't even had a proper discussion yet. Can't you be a bit more rational?" This is why I hate it when women can't have a logical conversation. They continued with their snide remarks, trying to destroy the family, huh? So arrogant, not caring about the place or situation. They said they wanted to discuss, but it was clear they weren't in a state to have a reasonable conversation. I had already given up on talking and was only focused on getting Tom to sign the divorce papers. But it wasn't just their terrible attitudes that led to this. "I have something to ask your mother," I said, pulling out my smartphone to show a video. My mother-in-law's face, who had been quiet until then, visibly changed upon seeing the screen. It was no surprise she recognized the content. It showed her opening drawers in my room. Since I had started refusing to do chores at their house and limited my interaction, I noticed items gradually disappearing from my room. The drawer contains a large box for antique jewelry, which was the conversation starter between my husband and me. I purchased them for their design, so overall, they are not very expensive, but some are valuable enough to be kept under lock and key. Stolen were not only the visibly expensive pieces of fine jewelry, but also several antique rings and accessories. And then, the contents of the locked box. Each item is a treasured part of my collection, and the realization that someone has been breaking into my room sends a chill down my spine. I considered the culprit, but it seemed unlikely that my husband would target the antiques for monetary reasons. The prices vary, and since my husband, with whom I share household finances, has never reprimanded me, I've been freely collecting them. He knows I've been buying mostly inexpensive items. However, the disappearance of the jewelry with gemstones clearly indicates the motive was to cash them in. Could it be that someone was let into the house while I was away? Realizing someone had been entering my room, I bought a small camera and placed it hidden in the room. After setting it up hidden in the shadow of the furniture, it captured the culprit's image within just a few weeks. At a time when no one was supposed to be at home, the person who appeared in my room was my mother-in-law. Someone could enter without my knowledge only if my husband had lent them the key or given them a spare, most likely. My mother-in-law used it to target the times the house was empty, stealing small amounts of precious metals from the jewelry box. When I confronted her with this undeniable evidence, she turned pale and exclaimed, "I've already sold them, I can't give them back." My mother-in-law became frantic and almost in tears, not knowing if the items had been sold to someone else. When I said, "I will claim damages corresponding to the value," she shrieked, "That's a lie. No way." Although my collection was mostly inexpensive, it included some pieces from reputable stores. Among the stolen items were these high-end pieces. Probably, the locked and carefully stored items caught her eye. And their cash value must have been substantial. But this meant the claim amount was in the tens of thousands of dollars. An amount she couldn't afford as a homemaker. My father-in-law, trembling with rage, glared at me. Without reprimanding his wife for the theft, he suddenly snapped, "Don't mess around. You're going to sue over this trivial matter? If you've married into this family, you should listen. Instead of dressing up in toy-like trinkets, why don't you work on yourself more, maybe lose some weight?" My father-in-law, red-faced and yelling. It seemed to genuinely believe that once married into their family, I was their property. He was just angry that I wasn't complying with everything he said. "Enough with the jokes." He finally stood up, raising his hand towards me. I braced myself for the blow, but my father quickly stepped in, preventing it. Just then, the doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of the person. The person whom I had contacted. A lawyer specializing in divorce issues. I had been consulting with this lawyer since I first considered divorce, especially after the theft suspicions arose. He was an older, authoritative lawyer from a firm known for handling divorce cases effectively. His presence filled the room with a serious atmosphere, and Tom and his parents seemed diminished by the lawyer's authority. First, the lawyer explained that we would be seeking compensation from my mother-in-law for the theft. Then, he laid out the evidence of the unreasonable demands and treatment from Tom and his in-laws. Including the diary I kept for such incidents, recordings I had made, and the footage from the small camera, all of which were admissible as evidence. He explained that we could claim damages for the mental anguish they caused. When the topic of divorce and the ensuing financial settlement came up, Tom, in a panic, got up and began pleading with me. "Throw away this stupid idea of divorce, we're in love, aren't we? You don't seriously want to split up?" As he groveled, his parents chimed in, "That's right, rethink this, you can still turn back." It was clear they hoped I'd withdraw the divorce, but I felt it was a waste of time to even engage with them. "We're not in love anymore, so that's inaccurate. I genuinely want to split up. If necessary, I'll consult my lawyer as many times as needed, even if it takes a long time or we end up in court." My firm rejection made Tom slump in defeat. Deflated, perhaps due to the authority of the lawyer's title, Tom's parents also quieted down and grudgingly agreed to the divorce. When the lawyer asked my mother-in-law why she stole, the shocking truth emerged. She was a reckless spender, and after splurging on shopping, she found herself short on living expenses. Unable to tell her husband, she planned to borrow money from Tom. He was on a business trip, so he told her, "Use the spare key. There's money in the bedroom drawer, take it." She did, but then noticed the rings I left in the bedroom and thought there might be more. Rummaging through my room, she found the jewelry box. And the locked box, which she quickly took to a locksmith. I lost the key, she lied to get it opened, took the contents, and replaced the empty box. Every time she was short on cash, she would sneak into our house and steal more. Hearing this, my father-in-law turned on her, calling her the lowest of thieves. Despite their insults, my parents ushered them out of the house, and they left in a loud commotion. I never went back to that house, leaving the disposal of the furniture to them. My ex-husband and his parents began living there. But due to the financial claims I made, they couldn't afford to pay, and the house and land were eventually seized. I heard from neighbors they moved to a small apartment and lived poorly. However, my ex-husband told me that his father had been leaving all the housework to his mother, burdening her and then blaming her for the theft, causing her to run away with most of the family's money. In a panic, my ex-husband called, asking if I knew anything. I had no contact with her, so I advised, "You should file a missing person report," and hung up. The two left behind did indeed report to the police. My mother-in-law is being searched for as a missing person, but so far, she hasn't been found. There's been no word from her, but I wonder if she will eventually be returned to my father-in-law and ex-husband. It seems that they are constantly bickering and fighting with each other now that they have no one to take care of them. Even at the company, I hear rumors about my ex-husband Tom, who is in a different department. Due to the significant decrease in his living standard, he's making more mistakes at work and his performance in the sales department has plummeted. Since he used to get work by being nice to everyone, his mistakes and missteps with clients have led to his reassignment to a less desirable department, famous for grueling tasks like telemarketing. He's becoming increasingly exhausted. Moreover, after committing a major mistake by sending confidential company information in an email to a client, he completely lost his footing. This became a big issue in the company, with various departments scrambling to take measures, and Tom was held accountable and penalized. Eventually, feeling uncomfortable, he chose to resign voluntarily, as I was informed by a well-connected colleague. As for my father-in-law, apparently, he too became more irritable at work due to his fatigue. His juniors and subordinates started complaining of mental distress, leading to his demotion for not being suitable for his current position. This hurt his pride, and he chose to resign in anger. Given his reputation, re-employment was difficult, and later on, Tom tearfully contacted me, saying, "We are living off our savings. Can you help us?" But I had no choice but to refuse. The alimony was already paid, and there was no reason to continue any relationship with them. I politely declined and then blocked their numbers. Finally free from them, I decided to change jobs to a company that had been offering me a good position, as I was growing weary of being known as the divorced ex-wife at my current job. Also, not wanting to rely on my parents indefinitely, I used the alimony to move into an apartment closer to my new workplace. My parents, though worried, respected my desire to be independent and saw me off. I make sure to keep in touch with them and spend time with them during long vacations. In my new environment, my life began to improve. I think I have recovered mentally, so much so that I can think positively. I would like to get married again if I have a chance. Hey! I'm going out with my friends, so give me some money. About $4,000 should be good. No way, that's too much money. What? So you married my dad, a doctor, just for the money after all? That's why you're so greedy about money. You're really a nasty woman. Due to an illness, I can't live a normal life without a ventilator and need a wheelchair to go anywhere. Despite my condition, my husband, who was willing to marry me, had a problem child from a previous relationship. His son, now a college student, planned a trip with his friends and asked me for money. However, with the monthly expenses for the ventilator rental and other costs, I couldn't afford to give him that much. That's impossible. Ugh. You're really annoying. Always acting like a mom, and if you're not useful, you might as well leave. Just disappear. After insulting me, he unbelievably unplugged my ventilator and stole the money from the dresser, leaving the house. I was left struggling to breathe. I'm Sally, 42 years old. Now, I'm happily married with a husband and a 15-year-old son, but there's something inseparable from my life. A ventilator. Since childhood, I've been ill. While other kids played outside, I preferred reading and watching movies. Of course, I wanted to play outside, but my body just couldn't keep up. Don't you go out to play? Going outside tires me, so today I'll read the book I got recently. I see, but staying indoors all the time will make you weaker. Try to go out sometimes and play with others. Okay. Back then, my parents didn't suspect any illness, probably just thought I naturally had low stamina. But when school started and I fainted during a physical education class, they realized something was wrong. Initially thought to be heat stroke, hospital tests revealed a rare illness. I can still live normally now, but the doctor told me that gradually I will lose more and more of my physical abilities. I remember that very clearly. Am I sick? It seems so, but it's okay. The doctor will surely cure you, and you'll be able to play with everyone again. So, can you believe that, Sally? As a young child, I understood that my condition might worsen or might not be curable. My parents tried their best to encourage me, but I could sense their deep anxiety. I see. But nobody really knows what the future holds. I didn't take the situation too seriously, being optimistic about the future. However, as I grew older, even a little walk would leave me breathless. And I had to attend online classes at high school. Life became confined to my home and hospital visits, and I couldn't find joy in my life. How was your study today, Sally? It's getting more difficult, isn't it? Leave me alone. Don't just come into my room. I'm sorry. Do you need something? If not, please leave. I knew I was wrong to talk to my parents that way, especially since they always supported me. I was a high school student, and deep down, I understood that. I wondered why I lashed out at my parents like that. They hadn't done anything wrong. Despite understanding this deep down, I couldn't control my emotions and often felt self-loathing for my behavior. Looking around, everyone was putting on makeup, dressing up, and heading out shopping. When I saw people on social media enjoying their high school life, going for a trip during their breaks, it really hurt. Why couldn't I enjoy life the same way? In middle school, I didn't make many friends because I was different, and attending online classes at high school meant no new friends. Conversations were limited to my family. And I began to feel like I was trapped in a birdcage. Why is it just me? Why wasn't I born healthy? I once blurted out to my mom when I couldn't control my emotions. She apologized for not being able to give birth to a healthy child. Of course, my illness wasn't her fault. I regretted saying that to her, realizing that maybe my parents were suffering more than I was, but at the same time, I acutely felt the unfairness of the world. However, when I turned 20, I got a job at a major company through a disability program. I could earn my own money and found hobbies I could do from home. I was growing mentally and began to find joy in life. Then, before I knew it, I was 30. How have you been feeling recently? Are the medications helping to stabilize your condition? Thanks to the new prescription you gave me, I'm able to live much more comfortably. That's great to hear. On a visit to the hospital, where I went weekly, a new doctor arrived. He was older than me, with a very calm demeanor. He sincerely dealt with my illness, and since my only interaction with the opposite sex was at the hospital, it became a sort of sanctuary for me. As we got closer, he suggested that it would be good for my health to go out occasionally when I felt well. So, I boldly asked him out for a meal. I've been wanting to try the Italian restaurant right in front of the hospital. Let's go. Actually, you're my last patient for the morning. How about now? It was my first time having a meal with a man, and I was really nervous, but I had a great time. I had always been cooped up at home, had hobbies, but never experienced romance. I thought no one would want to date someone with my illness and that I'd live alone forever. So, feeling my heart flutter like that was exciting. I experienced a feeling of exhilaration and a quickening heartbeat like never before. While it was exciting, it was equally exhausting. After that day, we started going out for meals. He would compliment my looks and call me pure and wonderful, and I had feelings for him too. It didn't take long for us to become a couple. I want to support you forever. Will you marry me? When he looked into my eyes and said that, I felt it was my only chance at happiness in life. Of course, my illness was a factor. I couldn't go out much, and all my work was done from home. The most I could do was eat somewhere after a hospital visit. Staying overnight somewhere seemed impossible, and marrying me would bring various restrictions. He had been married before, so he knew more about married life than I did. In this situation, he chose me as his partner for remarriage. I couldn't have been happier, feeling it was destiny. I'm looking forward to our life together. Me too. And I'm not sure how he'll react, but I'll talk to my son today. Maybe we can start living together next month? Of course. I'm not in a hurry, and I want us to be a wonderful family. His challenge wasn't just my illness. He had a son from his previous marriage, a middle schooler. I knew adolescents could be sensitive, especially with his dad remarrying. And the fact that his stepmom couldn't go out much due to illness. Honestly, I wasn't confident about fitting in or being accepted by his son. But worrying wouldn't help, so I decided to see how things would go. A week later. Well, at his age, I don't think he'll talk much, but his room is separate, so it should be fine. We should plan to move in together next month. Are you sure this isn't too soon? He's in his rebellious phase. If he didn't like it, he would have said so. But he didn't show any signs of that. He's been without a mother since he was little, so I think he's been lonely. Please help me out. He was right. As a doctor, he was often busy. Night shifts were common, and being motherless must have been hard for his son. I didn't think I could replace his mother, nor did I intend to be presumptuous, but I wanted to alleviate his loneliness if I could. That's what I was thinking. So began our life together. Looking forward to living with you. Yeah. He wasn't very talkative, whether due to his age or not fully accepting me yet, I couldn't tell. Initially, he wouldn't even make eye contact or communicate, but gradually, he began to look at me and talk. As my husband's work got busier, the boy and I spent more time together. I'm going out to eat with friends. Can I have some money? Is $60 enough? No way, that's not enough. After eating, we might go to bowling. I need at least $200. That's too much for just hanging out. Just because you never went out with friends doesn't mean you know everything. It costs a lot to have fun, and it's a mother's duty to provide. Being called a mother left me speechless. Looking back, I think it was almost like a kind of curse. I felt like I could never truly be his mother. But when he needed me, I wanted to be there for him. I believe that's what I was thinking. In retrospect, maybe a middle schooler didn't need $200 for going out. But I had my own earnings and savings, so I gave it to him. And I might stay at a friend's house, so don't tell Dad, okay? Staying over? Don't you have school tomorrow? Sure, but that's none of your business, right? I wondered if it was okay to let him be so free-spirited. My husband was quite strict, only giving a certain amount of money for outings. I knew I shouldn't be doing this, but I didn't want him to dislike me. Maybe he was starting to open up to me, and I feared if I was too strict, he might completely shut me out. So, I had these anxieties. All right, just be careful then. He ignored me and left, but I thought maybe giving him some freedom was better. I'm not his mom, and I didn't want to overstep and upset him. Maybe from his perspective, he was thinking, I don't want to hear it from you. But ignoring my husband's parenting approach hurt too. I knew raising a child wouldn't be easy, but I didn't expect this many problems. However, that night, I thought about it and realized I couldn't just stay silent about him. The next morning, I told my husband everything. I think it's partly because he's in his rebellious phase, but we can't just leave it like this. You're right, thanks for telling me. I expected a day would come when he wouldn't listen to me anymore. Well, some of it can't be helped, I guess. We can't spoil him, but being too strict isn't good either. I'll think about it. My husband seemed to be struggling with parenting, and I couldn't offer any good advice. I wanted to be helpful, but felt frustrated that I couldn't be more useful. Still, I continued to support him in my own way. He eventually graduated high school and, though not the brightest, went to college. My husband and I were happy that he was progressing, but there was a bigger problem. It was about my health. Are you okay? Yeah, the medication helps a lot, but I've been feeling quite short of breath. My condition had been worsening for about a month, and recently I couldn't even lie down without struggling to breathe. My husband said my illness was progressing rapidly and that I wouldn't be able to work anymore. My respiratory system was failing, and it seemed I'd need a ventilator in the future. My legs were getting weaker, so I needed a wheelchair whenever I went out. It had progressed to that extent. You can't be serious. Don't worry, I'll always be here to support you. You're not alone. His words helped me keep my spirits up, but as weeks passed, it became harder to live normally. I had managed to build a good family life. His son was growing up and moving on, and I thought my husband and I would live happily together. But then I became dependent on a wheelchair and ventilator, unable to do anything on my own. I didn't want to be a burden to my family. So, I hired a helper using my savings, trying not to be a burden. But then one day, can I have some money? For hanging out with friends? I'm going on a trip. I need about $4,000. That's a lot of money. So, you want me to be the odd one out, huh? I didn't mean that, but honestly, my medical expenses alone were a significant amount each month. Thankfully, my husband, being a doctor, wasn't financially struggling. However, I didn't want to be too much of a burden, so I was paying everything from my own savings. It wasn't easy when he demanded $4,000 right away for a trip with friends. I understand what you're saying, but that's a lot of money. So, you're just pretending to be a mom, but you don't really care about me, do you? That's not true, but... Well, I don't need your permission anyway. You must be keeping some cash around, right? He then started rummaging through the dresser in my bedroom.
What are you doing?
Wow, you've been stashing quite a bit. And you won't give me just $4,000? Pretending to be a mom, but you're useless. He took the cash I had saved and stuffed it into his pocket. Why did he do such a thing? There's a clear distinction between right and wrong actions. I thought he would understand that much. Yet, I was truly shocked and disappointed. I never expected him to go this far.
Why are you doing this? There's a line between right and wrong, you know.
What's the use of all this money to you? I can put it to better use.
Stop it, it's not too late to put the money back.
You're annoying. I only stuck around because you were good with money, but you're just a nuisance. Just disappear. I was shocked and disappointed. I never thought he would go this far. Suddenly, he unplugged my ventilator. What is he doing? Why don't you get help from your dearly beloved husband whom you married? Oh, but maybe you married him not because you loved him, but for his money. He left me there, and I started to panic. I can breathe without the ventilator. But it felt like I had sprinted a marathon. My husband was still sleeping after his night shift, and I couldn't make it to his room. I collapsed, struggling to breathe, desperately trying to keep conscious. About 30 minutes later, my husband luckily found me on his way back from the bathroom.
Are you okay? What happened?
Well, I was relieved to be saved, but more than that, I was terrified to have discovered the true nature of my husband's son. The thought of living with such a person was unbearable. I told my husband everything that happened, the threat to my life, and how his son smirked as he took my money and left. My husband was visibly angry, trembling slightly with clenched fists. I knew he was furious, but I felt grateful that he was on my side. I'm so sorry for what my foolish son did. It's not your fault, but I can't live with him anymore. Of course, I agree. But just kicking him out won't make him understand anything. I have a plan. A plan? While I was glad my husband was on my side, it seemed he wasn't planning to just kick him out. I wanted to cut ties immediately, wondering what my husband was thinking. But after hearing his plan, I strangely agreed. Kicking him out would just end our familial relationship without addressing the root of the problem. A week later, he returned from his trip. I'm back. What's that smell? Welcome back. I just got back from a business trip myself. Do you notice a rotten smell?
What? A business trip? Weren't you at home?
No, I expected Sally to contact me if anything happened. But nothing did. Why are you so panicked? At that moment, he turned pale and rushed to my bedroom. He probably never imagined this scenario. After my son left the house, my husband was indeed sleeping, but he was still at home. My son probably thought that if my ventilator's power was unplugged, my husband would immediately take care of it. He must have had some idea of what my husband would say upon his return. He really didn't think things through. But the situation my son found himself in upon returning was different from what he had imagined. My husband didn't know about the unplugged ventilator. The house smelled of decay. I imagine various speculations must have run through my son's head, but there was one likely possibility. Desperately trying to deny this possibility in his mind, he rushed to my bedroom.
What?
What are you doing here? I thought you might have gone to the police station.
What's going on? And this smell?
Maybe I left some meat thawing in the kitchen and forgot about it. It's summer, so it might have rotted. But you had the nerve to come back after unplugging my ventilator. If you had any conscience, you'd go to the police. But I guess you don't. When I stated this clearly, he fell silent. I had died after he unplugged my ventilator and that he had left me here, lifeless. He must have thought that. But this was a strategy my husband and I had devised, and he fell right into our trap. He must have been in a panic, thinking he had taken a life with his own hands. That's why he rushed to my bedroom, pale-faced and sweating, in a state of alarm. But it didn't happen because my husband was there to help. If my husband hadn't noticed, my life would have been in real danger.
Do you realize what you've done? If things had gone as you thought, I would have been dead. Wait, did you trick me? I was really scared. Don't do this kind of thing. Don't joke. What you did is unforgivable. It's the worst thing a person can do. I just wanted to make her suffer a bit, but I didn't. It's your casual attitude that's the problem. She never troubled you, and yet you're no human, you scoundrel.
My husband grabbed his shirt and yelled, and his son just looked down in silence. He probably had never been scolded like this before. He was surprised and maybe even scared. But he should have known what reaction to expect after such an act.
I think you know this, but I'm cutting ties with you. You're on your own now. I'm not paying for your college anymore, and I don't care about your living expenses. Wait, don't say that. You're misunderstanding. I didn't do it on purpose. What are you talking about? It was just an accident. My foot got caught. There's no proof that I did it intentionally.
I didn't expect him to make such a desperate excuse at the last minute. After being scolded so harshly by my husband, I thought he might have reflected on his actions. But as soon as he realized he was being disowned, now without financial support for college or living expenses, he might be thinking he can't live this way. He resorted to making excuses. He's truly done as a person. Not a hint of apology or remorse towards me. My husband yelled at him for a reason, but he seemed to not understand at all. However, my husband looked utterly disgusted with his response.
Can I believe you're still not apologizing? Saying there's no proof? Your actions were all recorded on camera. Recorded? What do you mean? We installed monitoring cameras for any emergencies. I've seen all the footage, and it's all recorded, including your horrible words to her.
He didn't know about the camera in my bedroom because he never cared to check. But that's not the issue. The problem is that he continued to lie to my husband until the very end. Why couldn't he just apologize honestly? Even if there had been no camera, admitting his actions and apologizing might have led to forgiveness from my husband. But instead, he chose to escape his guilt. With no more excuses and nowhere to run, he suddenly began to apologize. I didn't want to see such a performance, but I remained silent.
I'm really sorry. I'll apologize as many times as needed and reflect on my actions. Please forgive me.
Choose now. Leave immediately or get reported to the police. With the camera footage, you know how serious this could be, right?
Wait, are you really going to turn your own son over to the police?
What you did doesn't deserve to be called son. A person who treats others like tools has no rights. You're no longer my son. When my husband spoke those words, he collapsed to his knees and began to cry. After always exploiting me and smirking whenever he received money, he had lost all his smugness. He might be regretting and reflecting on his actions now. Or maybe he's just regretting, not truly reflecting. But seeing him so miserable doesn't change my mind. I won't forgive him. Indeed, my illness might have been a burden. But there's a line between what's acceptable and what's not. A person who can't make such a distinction doesn't need a conscience. You're not to come near this house again, and don't contact us ever. If you can abide by these two conditions, we won't do anything more.
So, you're telling me to drop out of college? I have no place to live and no money.
That's not my concern. It's your choice. Just know, I won't provide any financial support going forward. And you must return the money you took without permission.
I can't pay back what I've already spent. I don't have a job or a way to live.
Can't pay because you don't have a job? That kind of excuse won't fly. Keep making ridiculous statements, and I'll consider involving the police. My husband said this, and the son had nothing to reply. It felt like I was leveraging a weakness, but I had to say this to get a sincere response from him. That very day, we packed his bags and kicked him out of the house. I don't know what he's going to do now, but it's all the result of the seeds he sowed himself. If he truly reflects on his actions, he might have a good life waiting for him. But if he keeps harboring resentment and complaining, he's bound to walk the same troubled path.
I'm sorry for causing trouble until the very end, but thank you for standing by me. I promised when we married, no matter what, I'd stay by your side and keep supporting you. Thank you, really.
His words warmed my heart a bit. It's not like I did anything, but it ended up severing the parent-child bond. I felt a bit sorry for him, but I'm glad my husband stood his ground. I can't live without my husband's help. So, I'll do anything I can for him in return. Life is never something you can do alone, you always need someone's help at some point. It makes me wonder if there's someone around to lend a hand when needed. If nobody is willing to help, that says a lot about a person's worth. I plan to continue living happily, supporting each other with my husband. I was told by my son, Henry, that his spouse, Michelle, cheated on him and even had a child with another man.
I can't forgive her for cheating and tricking me like this. I'm gonna get a divorce.
A month after he declared this, I got a call. Hi, Susie, it's been a while. I'm getting discharged from the hospital tomorrow and will be coming over. Michelle's innocent voice came through the phone. I couldn't understand what she was talking about.
Huh? Aren't you and Henry divorced?
What? Divorced? Me and Henry? Oh, come on, Susie, stop joking around. That's not true. From her words, it didn't seem like Michelle was lying. But of course, I couldn't just take her word for it. Suspicious, I decided to confront Henry, who was relaxing at home.
Henry, I just got a call from Michelle, and what she's saying is completely different from what you told me.
Upon hearing this, Henry started to tremble and clammed up. My husband, Ken, who was watching the situation, thought it was odd and grabbed his baseball bat, slamming it down on the table. Thinking he was about to get hit, Henry finally started talking.
Wait, please. Don't hit me. I'll tell you everything, I promise.
I'm Susie. My husband Ken is a retired police officer, and now it's just the two of us living together. Our son, Henry, lives independently and works as a freelancer using social media. I'm not too familiar with that field, but it seems he makes a living through his illustrations. He's quite well reputed and has even been interviewed on TV. Ken, having been a cop, initially didn't understand Henry's line of work. But now, he seems to have come around to accepting it. Since retiring, Ken has mellowed out and helps around the house, something he never had time for before. We live in a house with a garden, and I was looking forward to gardening with Ken. Then, on a sunny day, as we were tending to the garden, Henry suddenly showed up. Ken and I stopped our work in surprise.
Henry, this is unexpected.
Henry was grinning. I just heard you guys having fun and wanted to check it out.
What's with that grin? Got a problem?
Ken seemed a bit embarrassed. He scowled and silently resumed weeding.
Don't be like that. So, what brings you here?
Well, I have some important news. Suddenly, Henry's expression turned serious, making me brace myself for what was to come.
Well, it's not ideal to talk while standing, so please have a seat.
I suggested. Henry and I sat side by side on a small bench in the garden. Ken seemed concerned but chose not to join in the conversation, busily continuing to pull weeds.
I'm thinking of getting married. Really? Congratulations!
I was genuinely happy for Henry's marriage. Ken, clearly surprised, stood up to look at us.
So, who is she?
Henry grinned again. Her name's Michelle. And, she's actually outside our house right now.
What? Huh?
Ken and I exclaimed in unison. This was too sudden, and I wasn't prepared at all.
Hold on. I can't meet her without even putting on makeup.
It's fine. Being natural is best. Michelle is a good person, no worries. I'll go call her. Watching Henry go to call Michelle, I sighed. Looking at Ken, he seemed just as incredulous, shaking his head at me.
Well, that's just like them. Always like this. What a predicament. Well, it can't be helped. It'd leave a bad impression to send her away after bringing her here.
Soon, Michelle arrived, led by Henry. Under the afternoon sun, she looked radiant. Her clothes and mannerisms were charming, and she seemed well raised. I felt embarrassed about my own attire, impressed as I was by Michelle.
Mom, Dad, let me introduce you. This is Michelle. Nice to meet you. I'm Michelle, Henry's girlfriend. Thank you for coming here. Normally, we should have greeted you properly inside, not out here in the garden. Oh, that's all right. What a lovely garden you have. So many beautiful flowers. May I help out sometime?
Michelle's eyes sparkled. Her childlike, innocent smile made me happy too. Ken also looked pleased.
Well, Henry's really lucky to have you. He might not be perfect, but please take good care of him. I also ask you to take care of him. But Henry, next time, make sure to tell us in advance.
I chided. Henry sheepishly scratched the back of his head.
Actually, Michelle was only free today, and she thought it'd make things tense if we called ahead.
He explained. Michelle shot Henry a look of mild disapproval.
Well, that's all right. Let's go inside for some coffee.
Sorry, we have another appointment after this. We'll let you know once we set a date for the wedding. With that, the two of them left us standing in the garden. It all happened so fast, it felt like a daydream.
What just happened? It's fine. Times are different from when we were young. They're both responsible adults, so it'll be all right. I guess so.
Despite my worries, Henry and Michelle got married without a hitch. They seemed to be doing well even after their marriage. Living not too far from us, Michelle would come to help us out whenever she had time. We'd chat and garden together, and she'd ask to learn my recipes. Ken and I grew quite fond of her, always looking out for her. There didn't seem to be any mother-in-law and daughter-in-law issues, and our relationship was very good. However, Michelle seemed tired. Dark circles under her eyes and slightly hollowed cheeks. One day, while eating snacks, I decided to ask her.
Michelle, you seem tired lately. I'm worried.
I've been busy with work. Michelle was hiding something. I could feel it. Ken sensed it too and spoke gently.
Michelle, don't hesitate to talk to us. We're family. It's only right to share concerns.
Michelle remained silent for a while, munching on her snacks. Then, tears started to fall from her big eyes. Actually, Henry hardly helps with any housework. I understand we're both busy with work, but it's really tough when he doesn't do anything. With that, she bowed her head, her shoulders shaking. She was too sincere to complain about Henry to us, probably bottling it all up. I hugged her gently and whispered.
I'm glad you spoke up. We'll talk to Henry, don't worry. We're on your side, Michelle. Thank you.
I immediately scolded Henry over the phone. He fumbled for words, making excuses about being busy at work.
Cut it out. Being busy is no excuse. Marriage is about supporting each other.
I understand. Henry seemed to take it to heart, and it looked like Michelle's burden was lightened. Seeing her cheerful again, I felt relieved. She's such a good person, Henry should be working hard to make her happy. A few years later, in the spring, Michelle told us she was pregnant. My husband and I were thrilled at the prospect of seeing our first grandchild, but things didn't go smoothly. Michelle suddenly fell ill and, after being examined at the hospital, was found to be in a critical condition. She was diagnosed with preterm labor and had to be hospitalized. We prayed desperately for a safe delivery. Thankfully, our prayers were answered, and Michelle gave birth safely. She had no postpartum issues, but to be cautious, she stayed in the hospital for a while and planned to spend some time at our house after being discharged. I was eager to see my grandchild, but I knew Michelle's health wasn't fully recovered. About a month after, we had only made congratulatory phone calls. On a rainy day when we weren't gardening, Ken and I were watching TV. Suddenly, Henry came to our house and burst into the living room, crying out loud. "Dad, Mom, I can't stay with Michelle anymore." We were both so shocked we couldn't say anything.
What do you mean? You just had a child. Why would you say that?
Exactly. Start explaining. Sniffling, Henry pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket and placed it on the table. "Michelle's been acting weird for a while. She said she was visiting my parents, but she wasn't really coming here. She's been cheating." Ken and I exchanged looks of disbelief. We knew she visited us often, so Henry's words seemed hard to believe. "I know I've done wrong too, but after Mom scolded me, I seriously reflected on my actions. And yet, Michelle went and had a child."
Wait, so the child Michelle gave birth to?
Henry slammed his hand on the paper on the table. "It's not mine. The DNA test showed no parental relation. This is the report. Can you believe it? She tricked me, acting all innocent." Henry ranted, his anger seemingly uncontainable. Rainwater from his clothes splattered on the table and floor. I picked up the report and tried to read it, but the ink had blurred due to the rain. The report clearly stated there was no parental relation. Ken also looked at the report in disbelief. I didn't want to believe that Michelle cheated and tricked him. We had built such a good relationship with her, and I couldn't imagine her doing such a thing behind that demeanor. Ken felt the same and was visibly confused.
Can we trust this report? Shouldn't we investigate more?
I already confronted her. Her attitude changed completely. She insulted me, calling me a convenient ATM.
I can't believe that. It's true. Not just Michelle, her family blames me too. That's why freelancing is no good, they say. I reached my limit, that's why I came here.
So, what do you want to do? I'm cutting ties with Michelle. I don't want anything to do with her family either.
You mean divorce?
Yes. I have all the evidence. I'm not at fault. Henry seemed to have made up his mind. The situation had progressed so far, there wasn't much we could do, but I wished I could talk to Michelle one more time.
All right, we'll be prepared for that.
Thanks, Mom. It means a lot. But don't contact Michelle or her family. I'll handle everything.
If that's what you've decided, do as you wish. But please, no trouble with the police.
I know. I'll be going now. Henry picked up the report, stuffed it in his pocket, and left quickly. After that, we went through some gloomy days. There would be no more Michelle helping in the garden, no more requests to teach her cooking, no seeing our grandchild. It was a saddening thought. I thought we were starting a more joyous chapter in our lives, but this felt lonely. Ken didn't say it, but he seemed lonely too, quietly weeding the garden. Then, one day, about a month into this somber routine, we got a phone call. "Hello, this is Susie." "Oh, hi Susie. It's been a while. I'm feeling much better and will be discharged from the hospital tomorrow. I'll be heading your way with the baby, so please be ready." Michelle's innocent voice came through. I couldn't understand what she was talking about.
Huh? Aren't you and Henry divorced?
What? Divorced? Me and Henry? Oh, come on, Susie, stop joking. That's not possible. I was utterly confused and explained to Michelle what Henry had said. At first, Michelle was incredulous, but she got seriously angry when I mentioned the trickery accusation.
That's just ridiculous. Henry was the one who restricted me, saying not to meet other men. I followed that rule, and now he accuses me of cheating? Unforgivable.
From her words, it didn't seem like Michelle was lying. But of course, I couldn't just take her word for it.
Okay, I understand. Henry is actually at home now. I'll talk to him.
Please do. Right after I hung up the phone, Ken came back from the garden.
What's going on? A little issue. Is Henry in his room? I think so. I heard some talking.
I immediately entered Henry's room. He was on a call on his computer, but quickly shut the screen off as I walked in. What the? At least knock before you enter.
Sorry. I made some coffee. Wanna have some?
Henry seemed to sense something was off, but followed me to the living room without protest. However, there was no coffee there.
Hey, there's nothing here. Just sit down.
I sat Henry on the sofa and explained my phone conversation with Michelle. Henry started shaking as he listened. He refused to respond to any further questions. Ken, sensing something was off, picked up a baseball bat and slammed it on the table.
Henry! Speak up. We can't understand if you stay silent. Deny it if it's not true.
Henry remained silent, so Ken raised the bat as if to hit him. Thinking he was going to be hit, Henry finally spoke.
Wait! Don't hit me! I'll tell you everything. Please!
Hearing this, Ken lowered the bat.
All right, speak up.
Henry finally confessed.
Michelle and I haven't been getting along. I got tempted and cheated with another woman.
So, you're the one in the wrong.
I'm not to blame. Michelle ignored me, always paying more attention to you and Mom. I hated that.
Ken was furious with Henry's excuses.
That's ridiculous. You're the one who cheated. What happened to the other woman? Well, she got pregnant. But it's not like I wanted to get her pregnant. It just happened naturally.
Ken, seeing no remorse in Henry, hit him with the bat.
You fool! Do you understand what it means to have a child? What have you learned in your life?
Henry, crying from the hit, lashed out at Ken.
Shut up. You're also to blame. Always acting so high and mighty. Always criticizing everything I do. I'm fed up.
So you deceived us because you didn't want to be scolded?
Yes. I planned the pregnancy dates so it wouldn't seem odd. If things had gone well, I could have pinned it all on Michelle and left her.
Henry, defiant, revealed all his actions.
Go ahead, hit me.
I'll report it to the police. I'll even post it online. Former cop abuses son. It'll make a good story.
You can't be serious.
But it's true. That's how things work now. You and Mom are just outdated. Please just stop interfering in my life. Threatened with police action, Ken was unable to do anything.
Even so, you're the one who lied. How are you going to explain that?
Henry no longer listened to me. Mom, can you just be quiet? If you make too much noise, I'll expose it all online. But I wasn't afraid, no matter what he said. It was clear that what Henry did was unforgivable. Regardless of the era. And it was our duty as parents to teach him that. Well, then. If that's how it is. That's right. Keep quiet and I might even share some of my earnings with you. I'm making good money, you know. Henry grinned. Thinking he could buy our silence with money. But that didn't matter to us anymore. Unfortunately, we're satisfied with our lives. Write whatever you want on the internet. I'm going to tell Michelle and her parents. At that, Henry suddenly panicked. He must have realized he had said too much in the heat of the moment.
Wait! You can't do that! If her parents find out, it'll be a huge problem. You can't tell them.
Ken, fed up, grasped the bat again.
Do you really think you can get away with this? It's your fault for concocting such a poor plan. Just accept it. No! I'll write everything online. I'll say it's abuse. Try it if you dare.
While Ken was dealing with Henry, I called Michelle and told her everything Henry had said. I told Michelle everything Henry had blurted out. I can't believe it. I've decided. I'm sorry to say this to you, Susie, but I'm going to divorce Henry. I'm the one who should apologize. I'm really sorry. I'll also explain everything to your parents. Then, I called Michelle's parents and told them everything that had happened. They were furious and wanted to have a meeting at my house the next day, so I agreed. When I told Ken, he took away Henry's computer and phone to prevent him from escaping. We watched him all night to make sure he didn't do anything strange. Henry tried to escape several times, but it was futile in front of Ken, a former police officer. The next morning, Michelle and her parents arrived. Michelle's mother agreed to take care of the baby, so they went to another room. Then the discussion began. I'm completely shocked. Never thought he could be such a person. I'm really sorry. We spoiled him too much since he's our only son.
Anyway, Henry, explain yourself.
Michelle demanded, her face showing an anger I had never seen before. Henry, too scared to meet her gaze, mumbled something inaudibly.
Speak up. I can't hear you.
Michelle scolded. Henry then spoke louder, explaining everything. When he got to the part about the false accusation of cuckolding, Michelle's father and she both erupted in anger.
How dare you accuse our daughter of such a thing? How far will you go to disgrace her? It's unbelievable. Susie and Ken are such good people, what a shame.
Faced with everyone's anger, Henry frantically ruffled his hair. Unable to lie or make excuses anymore.
After all this, I can't continue our marriage. I'm divorcing you. Please sign the divorce papers right now. You'll also have to pay alimony.
Michelle declared, placing the divorce papers on the table. Henry shook his head, refusing to sign.
Henry, you think you can say no at this point? You brought this on yourself. Sign it.
Ken yelled. Unable to resist, Henry signed under our watchful eyes.
And sign this too,
Michelle said, handing over a document for a generous alimony and child support. Henry reluctantly signed, but then his attitude changed completely.
Don't get too happy just because I signed some papers. What are you saying now? Listen up. I'm a famous person. My work sells for a lot. I have value. If you had just obeyed me, you could have enjoyed the benefits too.
Henry's outburst was unstoppable.
You'll regret cutting ties with me. You'll come crawling back when you're poor and need money. I'll marry my mistress. I don't care about you anymore.
With that, Henry grabbed his phone and computer and left our house. An awkward silence filled the room. I'm so sorry. How could he turn out like this? I couldn't help but cry. Even though Michelle and her parents were the real victims.
But honestly, divorcing Henry is the right decision. Michelle is a wonderful person, she'll find someone better.
It's not about that. But I'm really glad I met you. If it's okay with you, I'd like to maintain the same relationship as before. Michelle's kindness made me feel even more guilty. But then, her father asked us a favor. Actually, we have a request. Our place is far, and Michelle isn't fully recovered. She also has work. Could you please help take care of her and the baby? We were more than willing.
Of course, don't hesitate to ask us for anything. We'll treat Michelle like our own daughter.
Everyone laughed, relieving the tension. Michelle's mother and the baby came into the living room. We spent time talking about the baby and enjoying their company.
If only Henry realized that happiness isn't about money. He's such a fool. Actually, we were the ones who had been helping him get work. I didn't know that. Yes, but we'll stop that now. He won't be able to work as he used to.
Michelle's father's words turned out to be true. Without their help, Henry's work opportunities plummeted. But he was too proud to ask us for help. He went on to marry his mistress and had a grand wedding. However, the divorce and his dealings got leaked online, and he faced a huge backlash. When I saw it on the news, I asked Henry if he was okay. He blamed us for the leak and cut ties with us. It didn't end there. It turned out the child of his mistress wasn't his. It was probably thought that sticking with Henry, who earned a lot of money, would be safe. Ironically, he ended up being cuckolded. Henry's work, once highly regarded, was no longer valued, and his contracts with various companies were terminated one after the other, leaving him with a hefty amount of penalties to pay. Moreover, his careless handling of tax matters led to further reprimands, and he ended up with a massive debt. I wanted to help Henry multiple times, but Ken stopped me. I understand how you feel, but this is his trial. He needs to overcome this, or he'll just repeat the same mistakes. It was clear, though, that Ken was worried about Henry. With nowhere else to turn, Henry would come to our house, claiming his right as the grandfather of the child. However, I made the tough decision not to let him in. He then resorted to shouting outside our house, "Michelle, I was wrong. Let's make up. Let me take care of the child as his father." He was so persistent that Ken eventually had to call the police to drive him away. Thinking of the worst-case scenario, Michelle quit her job and went back to her parents' house with the baby. Henry gave up and returned to his mistress, who appeared to be quite free-spirited. But he endured, unable to make matters worse in public. In addition to that, he was living in poverty due to his debts. When Michelle learned that Henry wasn't coming around anymore, she started visiting us with the baby, enjoying gardening and cooking together. We grew even closer to Michelle's parents and now often go on trips together. We're looking forward to visiting a tourist spot on our next holiday. Despite everything that's happened, we're living very happily now.
Right now, my dad is in critical condition. Can you come right away? I'll give you the hospital's address.
What? No way, I've just arrived at my vacation spot.
Huh? Vacation? What are you talking about? My father is in a serious situation.
When I got angry like that, my husband said something unbelievable. I mean, I'm not really involved with him, you know.
What?
I'm exhausted from work every day. Let me have this trip. I felt my feelings for him cooling down rapidly. Fine. Don't bother coming back then. My name is Julie, a 30-year-old housewife. I've been married to Ken for 3 years. We met at a social gathering. Being of the same age and sharing similar interests, we were drawn to each other and began to meet just the two of us. After several dates, he confessed, and we started dating. He was bright and refreshing, always making me laugh. I was increasingly attracted to him. Our relationship went smoothly from there. About 2 years into our relationship, he proposed to me.
My feelings for you will never change. I want to build a warm home with you. Will you marry me?
Yes.
I'd be honored.
I immediately accepted his proposal. And so, we decided to get married. We then visited each other's parents to announce our marriage. My in-laws were very kind, and I felt relieved there wouldn't be any mistreatment. After a successful meeting between our families, we got married. Then our married life began. I quit my job to become a full-time housewife, as Ken had wanted. I worked hard at household chores, supporting him in every way. I made sure my cooking, laundry, and cleaning were top-notch. I paid special attention to our meals, ensuring a variety of dishes and different menus daily. It seemed like he was satisfied with my efforts.
Your cooking is so good, it makes me want to come home early every day. I'm glad to hear that. I'll keep making delicious food.
Thank you. Seeing him happy while eating made me feel joyous. I believed we would continue to live happily together. But things started to change after our daughter Mina was born. Being a new mom, I struggled with many unknowns in parenting. Sometimes, I couldn't manage household chores as I wished. Mina often woke up at night, making it hard for me to get up early and prepare Ken's lunch.
Sorry, can you buy lunch today? Mina kept me up until 4 a.m.
What? No lunch? I don't want to eat out. Then you should have stayed up and made lunch.
What?
You're just relaxing during the day, right? Sleep when I'm at work. Frustrated, Ken snatched $50 from me and left for work. I was stunned by his words. I didn't expect such a reaction. I was doing my best with parenting and household chores alone. I accepted doing household chores since I'm a housewife. But I wanted his help with parenting. There's no rule saying I should be the only one to bathe her, change diapers, or soothe her at night. However, Ken seemed to think his job was done by working, and parenting was solely my role. He couldn't accept any slack in household chores because of our child.
Is this another lazy meal? What? Lazy?
It's obvious.
What do you mean? There's a main dish, 2 side dishes, and a soup.
The main dish is weak. You used to make more substantial meals. Are you slacking off?
I've told you, I'm swamped with childcare and can't spend as much time on household chores.
That's just an excuse. My mom always managed, even with me and my brother. She had it harder than you with just one child. You're just being lazy.
But
I never thought he could be so insensitive. He seemed so kind and gentlemanly before marriage, but turned out to be a completely different person after having a child. As a full-time housewife with a child, and not working, I had no choice but to rely on my husband Ken's salary. I felt it was unfair, but I couldn't stand up to him, fearing that being abandoned would be the end for me. In the end, I couldn't argue back and just accepted what he said. It really infuriated me when Ken seemed pleased with himself for having the upper hand. I wanted to go back to my parents' house to relieve stress, but it was quite a distance from our home, making it hard to visit easily. This added to my frustration. If I could meet and talk with my mom during the day, it would help me let off some steam and feel more at ease. However, the distance meant I often had to endure alone. Despite this, I managed to balance childcare and household chores. Time passed, and my daughter Mina turned 3. At this age, she began to speak a lot more, and conversing with her became a way for me to take a break. Now that she started going to kindergarten, I had some time to myself, which allowed me to do housework and relax more. However, my relationship with Ken was growing colder by the year. He seemed not to want to be with me anymore and started coming home later and later. Usually, he returned around midnight, sometimes just catching the last train. He rarely ate dinner at home and barely interacted with Mina. He would come home when she was asleep and leave for work before she woke up, so they hardly saw each other. At one point, Mina even thought of Ken as just some man who was around on weekends. I felt it was bad that her own father was seen this way by his daughter.
Ken, can't you come home earlier? Mina doesn't even recognize you as her father. She asked me where her dad was and what he was doing. She tells her kindergarten teachers she doesn't have a father, and they even asked if we were divorced.
Ken seemed a bit shocked by this, but unwilling to change.
I'm working late, then going out with my boss and juniors for drinks. It's all linked to my earnings, which supports our family. So, you should handle these things. That's your role as a wife and mother.
In the end, he just dumped everything on me. It sounded plausible, but essentially, he didn't want to do anything. I doubted whether he was really working overtime or just out drinking. While I nodded along to his words, inside, I doubted him. It was foolish of me to have hoped for his understanding. He didn't share my sense of crisis at all. Underestimating a child can lead to a harsh backlash someday. And while Ken claimed he was working hard, our financial situation hadn't improved. If he was truly working overtime, it meant he was spending the extra money on himself, which was pointless and only beneficial to him. Ken began going out alone more often on weekends, even telling me to pack for sudden business trips. He seemed to see me more as a housekeeper. It seems like the only reason for continuing our marriage is because I take care of everything around the house. I didn't want to live just to take care of him. This rebellious feeling grew within me. But as long as we depended on Ken's salary, I couldn't just leave with Mina. So, I told Ken I wanted to work part-time during the day. Earning my own money, even a little, was important. As expected, he wasn't happy.
Huh?
That's unnecessary.
You just need to take care of the house as a full-time housewife. I want to save for when Mina wants to take classes or for school expenses. Of course, I'll still do the housework. Besides, you're hardly home for dinner these days. Me working during the day won't affect anything.
After some thought, Ken agreed.
Just make sure you do the laundry and cleaning.
That's the condition.
I promise I'll manage everything properly,
I assured him. This way, I convinced Ken and started working. Perhaps it was the way I phrased it. Not blaming him, but suggesting it wouldn't disrupt our current lifestyle. Ken must have realized that whether I worked during the day or not didn't matter. I immediately started looking for a job and found an office position with short hours. I was hired, much to my surprise. Working part-time and interacting with people of various ages and perspectives was a significant change for me. It widened my horizons and kept me in a better mental state. Earning my own money gave me confidence and strength. I worked hard and soon earned recognition at work.
Julie, you catch on so quickly. You're a great help. I wish you could become a full-time employee.
Yeah, Julie, aren't you interested in becoming a full-time staff member?
Well,
honestly, I was very interested. But becoming a full-time employee would make it difficult to balance childcare and household chores. First off, Ken probably wouldn't approve. When I shared this with my superiors, they looked disappointed but understood. However, I made it clear that I wasn't uninterested, so maybe there'll be another chance in the future. So I decided to keep working hard and wait for the right time. Meanwhile, something concerning Ken started bothering me. I suspected he was having an affair. One day, during my lunch break at work, I went to eat at a casual Italian restaurant downtown. That's when I saw Ken leaving the restaurant with a woman I didn't know. Ken was in a suit, and the woman looked more like she was dressed for work than for leisure, so maybe they were just colleagues having lunch. This alone wasn't enough to conclude he was having an affair. But, call it a woman's intuition, I felt there was a high chance Ken was cheating with that woman. So, I decided to hire a detective agency to investigate. Maybe Ken's late nights were because he was meeting with his mistress, not staying late with his boss as he claimed. He didn't look as tired as he should have been, probably because he was enjoying his time with his mistress. While making these assumptions, I waited for the investigation results. About 2 weeks later, the results came in. Ken was indeed having an affair. And the woman was the one I had seen. I felt a strange sense of relief that my suspicions were correct. Probably because this meant I could end things with Ken. If he was cheating, he would be at a significant disadvantage in a divorce. I could claim alimony and child support. And with a job offer for a full-time position, I felt confident I could manage even if we divorced. I decided to leave Ken. But then, I got a call from my mom.
Hello, Mom, what's up?
Julie, I'm sorry to call you out of the blue. Your dad collapsed and has been taken to the hospital.
What?
I hurriedly took Mina with me to the hospital. I hadn't visited my parents in several months and hadn't seen them since then. Hearing about my dad's sudden collapse was a shock. When I arrived at the hospital, I found my mom looking anxious.
Mom! Julie! Thank you for coming. How's Dad?
He's undergoing treatment now. We were relaxing at home, and he collapsed when I returned from the bathroom.
I see.
I patted my mother's back. She must have been shocked to witness her partner collapsing. The thought of losing my father was distressing. Just thinking about that made me feel really hurt. After a while, the doctor came out and informed us that my dad had suffered a stroke. He regained consciousness, but his condition was still precarious. Dad was admitted to the hospital. We went to his room and waited by his side as he slept. A few hours later, he slowly woke up.
Dad! Hey!
I'm sorry for worrying you.
I'm just glad you woke up.
The doctor came and checked my dad's condition. He was stable for now, but there was no telling if his condition might worsen. Mina had fallen asleep, so I left her with my mom and went back to our house to get some of Dad's clothes. During this time, I sent Ken a message, informing him that my dad was seriously ill and in the hospital. Ken didn't read my message immediately, but I figured I had done my part in informing him and hurried back to my parents' house. Later, we returned to the hospital, where my mom, Mina, and I stayed with my dad through the night, hoping for his recovery. He seemed to be breathing steadily, and I thought he might get better. However, his condition worsened by midday. He was rushed to the treatment room, hooked up to numerous tubes, and treatment began. I couldn't shake the feeling that he might not make it. I tried to contact Ken again. Given that my father was in critical condition, I really wanted Ken, as his son-in-law, to be there. But I couldn't get through to him. It was Saturday, so he should have been off work. Maybe he had been out drinking till late and was now asleep. Just as I thought I couldn't rely on him, the call connected.
Hello? What's up? Ken, can you come to the hospital right away?
What? The hospital? What do you mean?
My dad's in critical condition. Can you come immediately? I'll give you the address.
I was about to tell him the address when he interrupted.
What? No way, I've already arrived at my travel destination. Travel? What are you talking about?
Oh, didn't I tell you?
Some colleagues and I planned a 2-day trip, and today's the day. I'm already here, so I can't go to the hospital. What are you saying? My father is in a serious situation.
When I got angry, Ken said something outrageous. I mean, I'm not really involved, you know.
What?
I'm exhausted from work every day. I deserve a break on my day off. Let me have this trip. He shouted. I felt my feelings for him cooling down rapidly. I don't care about you anymore. Don't bother coming back. I hung up and returned to my mom and daughter, where we watched over my father. Unfortunately, despite the treatment, he never regained consciousness and passed away. We were engulfed in grief. I wondered how much we cried. My mom must have been terribly shocked. She and my dad were very close. We were in a daze, unable to think about anything for a while. But we couldn't cry forever. We gathered ourselves and began making arrangements for my dad's funeral. The wake was held the next day, and the funeral the day after. Many relatives, friends, and others who admired my dad attended. Just before the funeral began, Ken showed up.
Sorry. I'm late. I couldn't make it when your dad was critical.
His apology seemed half-hearted. Not sincere. I confronted him as he approached.
Why are you here? People who aren't related should leave.
What?
I'm your dad's son-in-law. Are you angry I'm late? Everyone's already here, don't get too emotional.
He tried to calm me down. But I stood my ground.
When I told you my dad was in critical condition and asked you to come to the hospital, you said you were on a trip and it was impossible, right? You yelled at me, saying you deserved the trip.
The funeral hall buzzed with my words.
Hey! Don't talk like that. I was on a work trip with colleagues. I couldn't just leave. It might have affected my work. A colleague so narrow-minded that they can't let you leave during a family emergency won't achieve much at work. Or were you really with your mistress? What? What are you talking about? Stop making baseless accusations. That's defamation. Sadly for you, I have evidence of your affair. What? I had hired a detective agency. There are lots of evidence photos in my bag. But for now, I'll show you the data saved on my phone.
I showed him the screen, and his face turned pale.
When did you?
Suddenly, my in-laws stepped in front of Ken, and my mother-in-law slapped him.
What are you doing? Betraying Julie and Mina and having an affair. You disgrace!
The in-laws scolded him while he stood there in shock. The funeral attendees looked at him coldly. My in-laws apologized to my mom and me, then took Ken away. Afterward, I contacted a lawyer, demanded a divorce from Ken, and filed for alimony and child support. Ken ended up with a substantial debt. I reported everything to his workplace, and he lost his standing there. Now, he's been relegated to another department, treated coldly by his colleagues. and cut off by his in-laws. He lives a lonely life, mostly paying off his debts. Ken's mistress seemed to have treated their affair as just a fling, and she quickly disappeared from his life. Meanwhile, I moved back to my parents' house and now live there with my mom and daughter, Mina. When I discussed my situation with my company, they said the offer to become a full-time employee still stands. If I request it, they're willing to make the switch right away. This should make supporting my daughter no problem at all. I asked Mina how she felt about not seeing her father anymore, and she said it was okay since he was practically non-existent in her life anyway. Even if Ken wants to see Mina, I doubt she'd be interested in meeting him. I plan to continue pouring my love into Mina, spending happy and joyful days with my mom and daughter. Take good care of those two, will you? What do you mean, take good care? Although John said it casually, I wonder if he would have accepted it if nothing had happened. I still don't quite understand. John was supposed to have gone on a business trip, but apparently, he had an accident at his destination. The call I received led me to a small town. It was suspicious that business trips, which had never been frequent before, suddenly increased, and he started going several times a month. Moreover, an employee of a copier company having a traffic accident in a town must mean something's up. While thinking about all this at the hospital, I accidentally ran into Emily. Why is Emily here? And what does it mean that she was in the town with John? Even in this seemingly desperate situation, it's infuriating to think he believes he can still deceive everyone. Does he think I'm just going to let this slide? I have strong allies, so there's no way John can escape without consequences. He should wake up to reality and rethink his actions. My name is Aita Smith. I'm a 33-year-old preschool teacher. After graduating from a community college, I started working at a fairly large town's daycare center. The job as a preschool teacher is harder than I thought, but being around these always smiling kids somehow makes me feel refreshed. However, constantly dealing with children at work, I sometimes yearn for adult conversation. Surrounded by dozens of kids, with a few fellow teachers around, I remain an educator in front of the children. Busy with work and unable to match schedules with college friends, I hardly have time for a coffee break. I don't have time to make friends with similar interests. So I'm always an educator when interacting with anyone other than myself. As a teacher, I can't really have adult-to-adult conversations. At my workplace, I am strictly a teacher, nothing more. One day, I was asked to take over the data management at work. A teacher going on maternity leave had been handling it, and it fell to me, seemingly the most idle and timid. Honestly, managing the data is just more hassle, not something to be happy about. I wanted to go home early and work as little and as easily as possible, so this was nothing but an additional chore. Even a job like managing the printer, which I was not used to in my usual work. I really hated it. Ensuring the printer works smoothly, refilling ink, and managing paper stock. It's all so bothersome. However, I couldn't have imagined that a person who would dispel my gloomy feelings was about to appear. In the afternoon, the daycare's bell rang, and the data manager, which was now me, was called to the staff room. It was nap time for the kids, so after informing my paired teacher, I headed to the staff room. Hello. I've come for the printer inspection. I think I reacted as if I had been electrocuted at that moment. For some reason, his appearance or voice, there was something indescribable about him. Yes. I'm in charge. I took over from the previous person, and now I'm responsible. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. I'm John Smith from the printer company. My first impression of John was pretty intriguing. It wasn't the kind of feeling you'd normally have for someone you meet through work. It felt strangely familiar, like I had met him somewhere before. You probably won't remember. Do you sometimes stop by the store in front of the station in the morning? That comment jogged my memory. Oh. You were in the snacks section at the store, right? I occasionally stop by the store near the station to grab lunch or a drink. The items I buy vary, but there's always this guy there at a certain time. Right at the entrance, standing near the prominently displayed new products shelf, carefully choosing which one to buy. That was him. Actually, I've seen you at the store. Never thought I'd meet you here.
That's my line. I was curious about the new snacks, but I also found myself wondering about the lady I saw there sometimes.
Could something like this really happen? Usually busy with kids at work, I, a woman with virtually no encounters with men, remember feeling thrilled by his words.
Talking about work is one thing, but how about we exchange contact info? Of course.
That was how I, on the day I met the printer company representative, ended up exchanging contacts with him. We gradually got closer, sharing little daily incidents and amusing stories, and he became more and more significant to me.
It was love at first sight for me. But as I got to know Aita, I realized she's someone I want to be with all the time, someone who makes me feel so at ease. Will you marry me? I can't believe this dreamlike day has come. I'm so happy.
For me, who thought I'd just age being focused on work, this was an unexpected spring. Meeting someone by chance on the streets, deepening our interaction and love, and moving towards marriage as a goal. At that moment, I was on top of the world, but I also had another thought in my heart. I won't end up like my sister. I will seize my happiness. I whispered that to myself. My sister, Emily, is 2 years older than me. Though we're not far apart in age, the idea that we're close as sisters is a complete misconception. I'm, well, not exactly a standout type. Just an average person who decided to become a preschool teacher because I loved kids, with decent grades and an okay sense of style. On the other hand, Emily was the total opposite, always focused on fashion. She was always thinking about how to stay beautiful and stylish. The kind of person who was part of the top, trend-setting, somewhat admired group in her school. Perhaps it's because of such relationships, but dating men has been a common occurrence since my student days. Ever since she got a boyfriend in her first year of middle school, Emily had never been without a boyfriend. She moved out of her parents' house right after high school graduation to live with her then boyfriend. In the end, she had a daughter at the age of 25 and settled down, but soon after, she got divorced. I sometimes checked if she's doing well by connecting with her on social media. She always dressed up stylishly and posted dazzling photos, but I couldn't help but feel a sense of emptiness. More like a fake facade from my childhood when I couldn't stand not being the center of attention, rather than a real mother. It's not about flaunting happiness in front of others. I believed that I should weave a happiness that fulfills myself and John, that was my belief. Life was blissful right after we got married. Coming home to someone I love, sharing meals, and enjoying the calm evenings together was something I cherished. We'd share our day's experiences and laugh together, those moments were priceless to me. But at some point, things with John started to feel off. He began commenting on my appearance and behavior. He seemed like the type who wanted to control others, always offering unsolicited advice. At first, I tried not to mind it, but it was becoming too much. Hey, Aita, don't you ever do your makeup properly? As a preschool teacher, it tends to come off while taking care of kids or playing with them, so not really. But isn't that outfit a bit too casual for work? Is it? I always dress like this, don't I? That day, I was wearing a hoodie and jeans. Since I bike to the daycare, I prioritize comfort, and I change into work clothes there anyway. I've always commuted in this style without any issues. Most working women in their 30s don't walk around in such casual clothes. It looks like loungewear. Really? I've always dressed like this. What's up all of a sudden? John always had something to say about my clothes or belongings. From my bag and outfit to my hairstyle and makeup, he'd complain they weren't feminine enough or didn't fit a working adult. Once, when we went out for lunch near the station and stopped by a bookstore, he picked up a women's magazine and started this conversation. Hey, Aita, why don't you dress like this? It was a magazine targeted at ladies, adorned with flashy text and decorations. Win this summer with a dress, get ready for a date with a $300 outfit. Honestly, these were far from my interests and lifestyle.
Sorry, but I'm not really into this stuff. It doesn't suit me or my job. Oh, so you're not interested in matching my taste.
He turned moody after that. 6 months into our marriage, he started acting strangely and would get upset for no reason. I couldn't understand what John wanted or was thinking. Since then, our relationship has felt strained. We only have minimal conversation now, with no room for fun chats or light jokes. It's like there's a draft between us. Though we've never had a big fight or anything to apologize for. I can't figure out where things went wrong. If there had been some issue or argument in the past, I could trace back and try to resolve it, but honestly, I'm clueless. The only thing that comes to mind is when I turned down the outfit John wanted me to wear. Could that be the cause? Living together, sharing the same space and time, I thought we'd find some common ground for casual conversation. There was a TV special about infidelity airing at the time. The usual commentators and hosts were debating definitions of cheating and where the line is drawn. Of course, I'm totally against cheating. I've even broken up with past boyfriends because of their infidelity. In my view, cheating is absolutely off limits, especially in a marriage. Trying to lighten the mood, I casually brought it up to John.
Hey, this TV show is discussing infidelity. Yeah, well, love takes different forms for everyone, doesn't it? Love does come in different forms, sure.
Then, John started speaking rapidly, almost as if he was trying to convince me.
Think about it, right? Isn't it weird that a single piece of paper called marriage suddenly means you can't fall in love with anyone else for the rest of your life? I mean, what's up with that? A bit of free love should be okay.
Honestly, there was something unsettling about his words, not quite what you'd expect from a married man. It made me wonder if something had happened. Or if John was the type who wanted to continue romantic adventures even after marriage.
Besides, love isn't defined by marriage as a formality, but by the depth of feeling, right? No matter how married you are, if you don't truly love someone, it's meaningless.
Hearing this made me question what marriage meant to John, and it left me feeling uneasy. His words seemed directed at me, and I couldn't bring myself to look him in the eye. How could I have fallen for someone who can say such unbelievable things without batting an eye? I must have been out of my mind back then. Days passed, but I couldn't shake off what John had said. Knowing him, he wasn't the type to joke about such things, which only made me feel more perplexed and eager to find out the truth. I wondered if there was any way to investigate this. I flipped through work files. Then it hit me, maybe I could ask someone for confirmation. One day, John came home, avoiding my gaze, and said,
"I have to go on a business trip tomorrow." "Another business trip? Weren't you gone for like 3 days last week?"
Unfazed by my surprise, John replied nonchalantly.
"Can't help it, right? Someone quit unexpectedly at this busy time, and work isn't getting done. I'm like the go-to big brother there, I have to keep things running."
His sudden announcement made me ask,
"Hey, is the person who quit someone I know? The senior you talked about before?"
I used to have an idea of who he mentioned from work since John used to share office stories and funny incidents. My casual question was met with a hard look.
"What? Does it matter who it is? What's it got to do with you, Aita?" "No, it's just small talk, nothing more."
But John, clearly irked, cut the conversation short and went to the bathroom. Lately, his business trips seemed to be increasing. 3 years into our marriage, there hadn't been any significant talk of department changes or promotions. Nothing from John, at least. But the trips had become more frequent. From once a month to twice, then thrice. Now, he's often gone twice a week, and sometimes even the entire week. The next day, before leaving for work, John said to me,
"This trip is with an important client, so don't you dare contact me."
"What?" The seriousness of his request surprised me.
"Got it? If my phone rings during a crucial deal and I get distracted, it's on you. Can you handle the responsibility if a $200 million contract falls through?"
With those words, he left, and I watched his retreating figure, deep in thought. I got ready and headed to work. As usual, in my hoodie and jeans, riding my trusty old bike. I finished my duties at the daycare and was going to take a break. I noticed the TV in the break room was covering a traffic accident. While chatting with a colleague about the dangers of traffic accidents, my phone rang. I don't usually carry my phone at work, but I had it with me in the break room and noticed the call immediately. It was from an unknown number, and to my surprise, it was the police on the line. They were calling to inform me that John had been in a traffic accident. Just the other day, he seemed fine, but now in an accident? I couldn't believe it, but I composed myself to hear more. He was in critical condition from the accident and had been rushed to the hospital. He was still unconscious, and they wanted me to come right away. I hurriedly asked for the location of the accident and the hospital's name. But something struck me as odd when I heard the name of the police station. It was in a famous town for sightseeing. Why would John be on a business trip there? This thought crossed my mind. But regardless, I needed to rush to John's side. The story begins from there. After consulting with the daycare director, I left work early and took some time off to be with John. But before heading to him, there was something I needed to do first. I made a phone call. And soon, documents were sent to my house. At the hospital, John was lying in bed. He didn't wake up for 5 days, but finally regained consciousness. The doctor said he had a head-on collision with a truck, resulting in severe damage and partial paralysis.
No way, John, you're kidding, right?
Sorry, but please take care of the two of us. I was lost in thought at his words. Take care of the two of us? What was he talking about? It didn't seem like a joke, so I asked.
Sorry, but who are the two people you're referring to?
John's expression briefly showed he had slipped up. Who else? It's me and Erica. Erica is Emily's daughter, my niece. I had met her a few times at my parents' house, but why bring her up now?
Why are you suddenly mentioning Erica?
Well, I got a call from Erica during my trip. She asked me to take care of her if anything happened to her. The fact that Erica would contact John directly, and not her mother, was puzzling. Why not ask Emily? I blurted out.
Wait, you have Erica's contact info?
Well, it's more like I was in touch with Emily. John and Emily were in contact? And what did he mean by take care of if something happened? His hesitant tone was particularly troubling. I was still trying to process all this when a nurse wheeled in another hospital bed. The fellow passenger in the same traffic accident, the nurse said as she wheeled in the bed. I couldn't help but cry out when I saw who was in that bed. It was unmistakably Emily. And her belly was noticeably large.
Emily? Why are you here? And that belly?
I was baffled by what the nurse said about them being co-passengers in the same accident. And the two people John was referring to earlier, could it be? So, let me get this straight. Because of the accident, you're asking me to take care of you and my sister, right? Exactly. You catch on quick. It's great to have a woman who's sharp in situations like this. I felt as if all the blood had drained from my body. This was too perfect to be a mere coincidence. It couldn't possibly be a coincidence. I was scared to ask, but I had to.
Don't tell me, John, you were on a supposed business trip here with my sister and got into this accident?
Well, the trip was real, or rather not a lie. It just happened that Emily was here, and I thought I'd drop her off. His stammering, desperate excuses were pathetic. I could somewhat sense that my voice was trembling. I could barely comprehend the situation I was in. So, you coincidentally met my sister during a business trip and ended up sightseeing together? I blurted out at John, overwhelmed by emotions. My emotions are a mess, torn between not wanting to hear any more and knowing this isn't an issue I can just ignore. Whether he knew about my feelings or not, John was speaking in a nonchalant tone. He probably still hasn't fully grasped the situation he's in. John was trying to figure out how to talk his way out of this. His eyes were busy, darting here and there.
You're blowing this way out of proportion. It's your bad habit to always think the worst, he retorted.
I seized the opportunity to confront him with the truth.
John, this was a fake business trip, wasn't it? A cover for your affair with my sister. Me? On a fake business trip? I'm a sought-after man. I don't have time for such things.
He seemed to think that yelling would make the problem go away.
So, you're saying you weren't on a fake trip? Even if you shout, I wonder if the boss would believe that?
John always put work first and valued his reputation above all. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that his work was solely driven by how much he was evaluated and praised by important people. Mentioning the company president's name made him flinch. When I mentioned the president's name, it seemed like he flinched for a moment.
What? The president? What does he have to do with this? If you're not doing anything shady, you should be able to explain everything to the president, if you can, that is.
John scoffed.
You don't understand how it works. A president doesn't get involved in every little employee's business trip. You're embarrassing yourself not knowing that.
Say whatever you want.
Oh, and I have a letter from that very president.
The moment he saw the envelope with the company's name, his expression changed from despair to joy.
Finally, my efforts have been recognized. Working from entry-level to regular employee for over 15 years, it all meant something, John said with a sense of accomplishment.
Really, a raise? I asked, almost bursting into laughter at his confident assumption.
Of course. My peers have been getting promotions, and I've been waiting for my turn for over a decade. But hard work pays off. Hurry, hand over the letter.
He genuinely seemed to believe the envelope contained a notice of his salary increase.
Here you go, take your time reading it,
I said as I handed him the envelope. He snatched it roughly and placed it on the hospital table. Holding the envelope, he looked at it intently, his face tense with anticipation. As he tore open the envelope, his excitement was evident. But upon unfolding the paper, his expression froze.
A termination notice. Why me?
The envelope was actually from John's company's president.
Look, there's more paperwork inside the envelope. You'll understand once you go through it. Shut up. Just shut up.
He snapped, flipping the envelope upside down and spilling out all its contents. The documents scattered on the table, some falling to the floor.
Receipt discrepancies for claimed expenses, and inconsistencies in your travel routes. Do any of these ring a bell? No way, that can't be.
I had contacted the company's president right after the accident, asking him to check John's company phone GPS and expense receipts. The president was already suspicious of John's actions. He was proactive in his response, especially since it was an employee's wife who reached out. Thanks to the president's efforts, a mountain of irrefutable evidence against John was gathered in no time. No matter how much John tried, the fact that he had been misusing company funds on fake business trips was undeniable.
It seems the president has been watching you closely, John.
He's thorough, isn't he?
Shut up.
There's nothing you can do now.
Your usual tricks and lies won't work. How much did you know?
Everything.
I knew you were getting fired.
I had been informed by the president that John was scheduled for dismissal. However, considering his long service, they had offered him the option to resign voluntarily.
What am I supposed to do now? Oh right, Aita, you're a preschool teacher, so you're fine.
Fine? What do you mean?
I questioned his smug expression. You have qualifications, so you can work anywhere, anytime. I may have my certification, but I'll become a stay-at-home husband, managing the house, taking care of Emily and her child. Nowadays, with volunteers and helpers, we can manage childcare.
Meanwhile, you work.
Sounds like a good plan, right?
I was disgusted by John's rambling, his nostrils flaring with excitement. His selfish remarks were a mix of astonishment and anger, stirring indescribable emotions within me.
Who's going to lend you a hand? You and some volunteers,
he said, still believing someone would help him out, a mindset I couldn't comprehend. People say that life is about helping each other, but in this case, it's clear that all he's thinking about is receiving help unilaterally. Relying on someone isn't bad, but living a life where you only think about getting help and relying on others, what's that about?
I didn't work hard to earn my preschool teaching qualification just to support a cheating, dishonest man. I'm not working to live with someone like that.
I handed John the business card of the lawyer I had already hired.
We're getting a divorce. I'll be seeking alimony. Any further discussions will go through the lawyer. A divorce? Demanding alimony from a partially paralyzed person? Are you a demon? Do you even realize what you're doing?
I sighed in exasperation and said,
Do you realize what you've done? I could throw your words right back at you. Maybe if you reflect on your actions, you'll understand. Weren't you in love with me, and didn't we marry? What about the vows we took in sickness and in health? Were they all lies?
John grasped the hem of my shirt with his functioning hand, but I briskly shook it off. Looking down at Emily in the next bed, I said,
Emily, you've always needed to be number one, haven't you? Even towards me, your younger sister.
Emily's expression faltered for a moment but quickly returned to normal.
Of course. I couldn't stand the idea of plain Aita getting married before me. I was supposed to be the one to marry into wealth first. Marry into wealth?
I asked incredulously.
Yes. My first boyfriend right after high school was just into casinos and didn't work. Erica's father earned a meager salary, and we were still living in an apartment. I couldn't stand it anymore.
Emily said tearfully, but her words were utterly self-centered.
You only think about what others can do for you. I'm a woman. Looking beautiful is my job, right? I want to be a shining jewel beside my husband. And I thought John, despite not being very handsome, worked at a well-known company and had a good salary?
I asked, to which she glared at me.
You didn't divorce John quickly, so we had to sneak around and ended up in this accident.
As Emily glanced back and forth between John and me, I asked.
So you're saying it's my fault? Yes, what about it? The choice of a marriage partner was undoubtedly your own. Using someone's income as an excuse to meddle with another person's husband doesn't justify anything.
Realizing further conversation with these two would only exhaust me, I decided to leave. Lingering in the hospital room would only cause more disturbance. Their dialogue was like something out of a drama, unbelievable and overly dramatic. The extent of their unreasonable statements left me speechless.
I'll discuss the rest with Emily through the lawyer. For now, just know that I'm seeking a lump sum in alimony. Alimony? Against a partially paralyzed person? Sorry, but you were on a cheating trip, weren't you? You brought this on yourself.
Emily reacted strongly to my words of "you brought this on yourself." Mumbling to herself in denial, her face grew increasingly pale, and I couldn't help but feel amazed at how far she was willing to run from reality. Eventually, John and I divorced. With a strong lawyer specializing in divorce cases, I successfully obtained higher than average alimony from John. After resigning from his job, John was heard to be drifting from place to place. Emily, having tried to steal her own sister's husband, ended up being disowned by her family. She's been aimlessly wandering, with nowhere to go. She did receive assistance from a facility that supports people with disabilities, but all she did was complain, "This isn't the kind of work I should be doing, and I can't stand these trivial tasks." Her behavior was not only unproductive but also disruptive to others, leading to her being banned from the facility. Now, she's barely getting by on minimal disability insurance. As for Emily's child Erica, after contacting Erica's father, he gladly agreed to take her in. This was a relief, considering the custody battle during their divorce where Emily insisted that a mother should always be with her child, and the mediator granted her custody. I was somewhat worried about Erica, so it's truly a relief she's with her father, away from Emily's influence. I felt relieved because staying with Emily, Erica wouldn't have been truly happy. I continue to work at the daycare, living my usual life. As for the alimony, John's family ended up paying his part, and Emily is repaying hers through a loan. Although the settlement was more than I expected, the happy days of ignorance are gone and won't return. Now, all I can do is look forward and move on. There's no point in looking back since I can't return to those days. Perhaps quitting my job and traveling to unknown countries could be a good change. These are the thoughts I ponder as I go about my day.